Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KMED this weekend. Pete Belcastro and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you for this first weekend of August. Summer just continues to roll along, and well, you know, we've been in the middle of a dry summer, certainly, and having the thunderstorms have been really cool, I have to say. The last few nights that I've been around.
Not in Medford.
No, you haven't gotten any in Medford, huh?
We hear them in the distance.
Boy, thunder and lightning and
everybody
and a lot of rain.
It's been a great show, but right. I live in
It's
Medford,
so nice to get that relief from the heat. It's wonderful to get it. Anyway, we're today with talking about a water update, and well, who better to share with us what's going on, the current situation, than Steve Mason, the director of the WISE project, right? Is that still the manager of the WISE project? Which is, of course, we talk about water for irrigation, streams, and the economy. We're going to talk about WISE in a bit here. And Randy White, who's the executive director and our good friend from the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District, is here. Farmer, rancher extraordinaire, you know, kind of the leader. Well, he's the farmer. He knows this stuff. He's out there.
And I always like to throw in former All-Pro linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm bigger than he was.
You didn't get hired for that, but yeah, I put you out there. I could.
Talk right into that thing, Randy, that's for sure. Well, before we go, just give us an update on what the situation is that we're seeing here in the first weekend of August, Randy. The district, I know, is certainly involved in lots of water projects. So give us a sample of what this has been for you guys here with, and we're in a drought. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, we're in a drought, and it's unfortunately the bad news for most people has been kind of good news for the district as far as business goes. It's not the way we'd like to see the business coming in, but both on the urban and the rural side, you know, we have a lot more phone calls in. I probably get 2 or 3 phone calls a day from farmers and ranchers wanting to convert from open flood irrigation to some type of a pressurized system because they can see the handwriting on the wall. You know,
that there's not going to be.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you know there's not really stress until there's a limiting factor. Mm-hmm. Well, we have the limiting factor with the drought, and it's, you know, people are feeling the impact of that, and so they're coming to the district and saying, you know, we see that we have limited water. How can we better take care of the water that we have, and utilize that water as efficiently as possible,
and stretch it further and further?
Kudos to the district, Randy, because you've had that message coming forward for years now on the program.
Well, and that's exactly where WISE fits into this whole program. You know, when it goes in, you know, we will have pressurized systems to, Steve, you can help me out, but just about every farmer that is within the irrigation districts will have a pressurized 60 to 90 pounds at each one of their sites.
And more of it as we go along.
Well, and they can't take more than what their water right is, but they can more efficiently use that water right
what they have and stretch it further. What has it been like? I mean, you own property. You see other rural people. We talk about here on the show all the time that, you know, a quarter of all real estate sales in Jackson County are rural properties, and so you're out there with that, Randy. What's it like? Are you getting water? Are people getting water, or what's the story there?
You know, we're getting water, but it's one of those things that, and I think we were talking about it earlier, is off the air, is we can't handle another year like this. And people start talking about, well, yes, I have older water rights, and so I'm fine. Those water rights are only good so long as you have water to take on there. And, you know, and one of the places that we own or lease is right along the Rogue River, and it has some of the oldest water rights on it. But I'm sitting out there seeing sandbars that I've never seen before. And, you know, when the water's gone, it doesn't matter how old your water right is. It's just not there.
There's it's dry. Yeah.
So you're getting calls. People are paying attention more, I think, when you get into situations like this. And so that maybe some good is going to come out of that particular part of it. Over to Steve for a second then. You were here a year ago, actually, in July. So you're 13 months ago when you visited with us and shared with us the WISE project. And it's so just bring up people up to date, because this is a project that would transform, right? I mean, Joe, this is like one of those transformative kinds of projects when it and I think it will be done. I don't know when, but it's going to be done here, but transform our entire valley. Tell people why, Steve, or what it is.
So again, basically, in the simplest terms, what it is upgrading the infrastructure. So you've got hundreds of miles of canals, and a lot of places you're using the streams to move this water, and you got about 7 reservoirs. The idea is take those old earthen canals, some 120 years old, put it in pipes. Anywhere you're using the creek to move the water, stop doing that, put in a new pipe, and then take advantage of all the benefits you get out of that. 1,100 feet ahead from Emigrant down to the bottom, everyone gets pressurized water. This is something Randy was talking about that I think is overlooked sometime in the importance there. One of the drawbacks to designing these new on-farm systems is there's a long-term cost to the user. They have to pay electricity, have to flip a switch.
Oh, yeah.
With this system, you don't have to do that. The pressure's there. There's no electricity required for that. And so the designs, the opportunities for the landowners to participate are much, much easier for Randy to help implement him and his staff to get that work
to be
done.
more efficient with what they do.
So, but in the simplest terms, that's what it is. So let's just pipe everything and get it out of the creeks and make it a very closed system.
We're basically upgrading from the old Roman systems of distributing water.
Exactly. My joke is basically we're taking 2nd century BC technology and upgrading it to about 1800 technology.
It's about time.
Yeah. So, but we've learned a few other things. We've figured out that we can put in hydropower. We have enough pressure to deliver it to every farm as much as they could need or more, and still generate hydropower in the system. Something in the generation around $2 to $5 million a year. In
$2 to $5 million
a year
in income from that type of thing, from power generation.
Right, which sounds like a lot, but again, when you're trying to pay off a project of this size, it's not a lot, but it is still something.
So the WISE project, when you talk about up in the reservoirs, which are 4 Mile and Hyatt Lake, nothing really changes with them, does it, in this project?
A little bit.
A little bit, but it's really not the major focus. The reservoir system itself still runs functionally pretty well.
It does. And so we'll do some improvements up there on the delivery systems, taking the water and putting it in those reservoirs. But from an engineering standpoint, that's very simple. It'll improve how much water we can get in there in the long run. But those benefits are relatively small relative to those that we can get down below. Or, and we started to talk about that earlier offline as well, is the difference in the reservoirs. You've got a picture here of all the reservoirs. You can go onto the Bureau of Reclamation's website and find up to the date how much water is anywhere in these reservoirs or in the streams around here. And it's striking. All the reservoirs are significantly lower today than they were a year ago today. Approximately 10 to 15,000 acre feet, which may not mean anything to some of you, but to put it in perspective, Emigrant holds 39,000.
Right.
So we're talking a third of it, basically. 25 to 30% of the water, it's less this year than last year. If you do this again next year with very little snowfall and little winter rain, we're going to be that much further, behind. And instead of making it to the middle of September, the irrigation districts are going to really struggle to stretch the water as far as they have. And I have to say they've done a pretty good job to stretch it as far as they have.
Well, I was going to think that.
Steve showed us a graphic. He's got the last year and this year's comparison that we could see eye to eye, and it was striking. Each reservoir is represented by a little cup, and the cup was well over half full last year at this time. In each of those reservoirs, it's well below half full this year for each of those at this time. That's a dramatic decrease, and it accentuates your point that if this happens one more year,
right,
there's a point where we run out.
And so one of the best things that WISE does is, sure, it provides all these other benefits to the on-farm. It makes it easier to run the system, but whatever water you deliver now gets delivered. You can hold more water back in the reservoirs and still meet the on-farm needs.
And take care of those needs.
Yeah, and by holding that back, it sets you up to be better set for the next year. And so you can basically stretch through a longer drought.
Could you even bank it in a good weather year?
I don't want to use the word bank.
Right,
it means something. Water banking is one thing,
okay.
and it has contractual meaning. But yes, the answer is yes, absolutely.
Water banking. I don't know what that even means.
Sounds good, though, especially this summer.
Well, interesting of water and how it's moved around. It certainly sounds like the water managers have done a pretty good job this year of taking what water has moved around. And if you go around and look at these reservoirs, you can certainly see. I mean, drive up to Howard Lake. I mean, Howard Prairie and Hyatt Lake. And you'll get a big rude awakening, don't you? I mean, it's just shocking how
you see a lot of bank and a little reservoir.
And in another month or two, those things are going to be empty.
Yeah, and don't forget, so water, WISE is Irrigation Streams and Economy. So one of the things those reservoirs, sure, they're primary irrigation, and that's what the water's for, but they all have recreational benefits.
Yep.
those benefits go down as the water level goes down. They go down fast. And so the more water you can have in there, the more recreational activity opportunities for the residents here of Jackson County. This year, not so much. It's not fun to go walk in the mud.
And that economical edge is tied to the irrigation edge because of the expansion of our vineyards and the small farms and the local origination of a lot of our produce and things that people are really pointing towards.
Yeah, if you look at that, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's a really strong point that we need to make is that on some of the research and monitoring that we've done with converting from flood to a pressurized system, we can see anywhere from about a third to 50% increase in production.
Holy smoke!
And again, I'm not an economist, but I'm
you
an
don't have to
ecologist.
be to figure that one out.
But if you look at that, and I just took one small sector of our ag industry, and that is livestock, cattle and calves, and pasture. And if we had a 3% increase, or a third of a percent of increase in that production, it would increase our farm gate value by about $11 million a year, just for those two portions of our economy.
Wow.
And if you take a multiplier effect on that of about 4 times, that money turns over about 4 times in this community before it leaves. That's about $44 million a year. And I don't think we have exact costs on this, but we're looking at somewhere around $450 million to get WISE in. If you just take that one small sector of the economy at $44 million a year increase to this area, in 10 years, it's basically paid this project off.
And then the hydroelectric as well, and other little streams that are there as well. Streams, so to speak.
Well, one of the things I really like about working with the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District is the approach you have that you can earn income from your properties if you manage them well, and you can do things with them, and still accomplish all the goals that that you set for people, for wildlife, for
Watch
whatever.
out, you don't increase
your
income.
And I think that's really important.
And again, the thing with the WISE project, as Steve alluded to, was that there won't be pumping costs.
Right.
So now, a lot of the conversions that we're doing still have a pumping cost and still have maintenance on the pump. And so you have all those costs coming in. So not only are you going to increase farm gate value by, again, just for those two sectors, by $11 million, you're going to decrease the inputs that they have on an annual basis. So, I think it really looks at as being a very much of a win-win for all sectors of this economy.
Well, the question always comes up is how far along are you
in
this whole thing, Steve? Because gosh,
is it done yet?
You've been at this thing for a while, and you really are passionate about this thing. So from a year ago, I guess, how far along have you been able to move the process forward?
From most people's perspective, it won't seem like a lot, but if anyone's gone through the bureaucracy of trying to get something built, it seems like we've actually made quite a bit of progress.
Really? Oh, good. Okay.
So last time I talked, we were finishing up working with a program called Oregon Solutions. It's through the state of Oregon. And through that, we ended up getting some funding. And we've used that funding to begin the feasibility and NEPA work. This is a required process you have to go through. It's a federal project because Bureau of Reclamation owns a lot of the infrastructure. And so we have to go through this process. So we're actually doing that. And in fact, in August, I'll be going out on the canals, working with some of the contractors, trying to figure out where we can straighten out those canals. We could talk forever on just the details and stuff. So the important part there is we're starting that.
And NEPA
NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act. And it's a process you have to go through on anything that has some kind of a federal
environmental impact.
Yes. And so we're working on that.
Okay.
That's going to take, I've been told, a year, which usually translate to 18 months to 24 months.
In government speak.
Exactly.
That works.
So we got to convert that, make that translation. But we've started that. We're almost done with the cost-benefit analysis. We'll be done in September. I'm afraid to give you too many numbers. I gave you the one from the hydro, but I can say that the numbers are really starting to look good. Recreation through the roof, the benefits there.
Excellent.
The job production, because while you're building this, you have to have people actually out there building it.
We need those.
Lots and lots of jobs. And then the stuff that Randy was just talking about, those are the numbers they're finalizing right now. And they're looking really, really good. And, he was talking about that multiplier effect, 4 times. that's the people that are selling fuel. Well, you got to pay fuel for the tractors, the processors, the haulers, all of that. All that money gets spent here. So there's just so much going on. So anyway, so we're doing that, the cost benefit. And so hopefully in a year and a half from now, we'll actually be drawing up permits and contracts to think about construction.
What's the long range timeline?
I hate to say that because I've never been right
we
before.
We won't hold you to it.
I've never been right before. But this is 2014. If we could start building in 2017, actually full-time putting in pipe wouldn't surprise me.
And putting in the pipe is what the system is really about.
Wow.
Yes. Taking those ditches, the open-air ditches, and putting them into pipes.
Yep.
It seems like such a simple thing, doesn't it? That you could do that just tomorrow.
Until you get bureaucracy and
But
federal
you can't.
agencies
You just
involved.
can't do that.
Randy
knows about those bureaucracies. Well, the Real Estate Show, we're talking about water with Steve Mason and Randy White. So don't you dare go away here on KMED AM and FM. We're coming right back after this. The Real Estate Show rolls on here on KMED AM and FM this weekend. Pete Belcastro and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you. And thanks for joining us. We get together every weekend here on KMED to talk about issues relating to real estate throughout Jackson and Josephine counties. And boy, one of the things we learned is it's so intertwined together. There is no man is an island, and that is the same. It's the same for real estate because we talk about rural properties and urban properties and property values and trying to keep them high. And I'm telling you one thing, I was a little distressed about the articles this week in the Mail Tribune regarding home prices in Ashland, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Because here we go. All of a sudden, these prices are taking off, and that's what happened the last time. And that was where it started again. It was in Ashland, and here we go.
And just
back
as
to that
younger
again.
families were finding their way into Ashland, which was just a godsend for the school district and folks, that might be tougher to buy into now.
And we're talking with Randy White, by the way, from the Jackson Soil Water Conservation District. And since the vote, the GMO ban on the vote we had here in the county, people looking rural properties, Randy, they're looking for organic areas that they can grow things and produce things. Young people, coming into this county wanting to do this. I'm really encouraged. I think this is going to be great for agriculture.
No matter what they're doing, whether it's organic or not, you still need to have water. So if we pull it back to the water, it doesn't matter what crops you're growing.
Yeah.
Other than dryland crops, you're still going to need the water.
Yeah.
And again, as we were talking off air, being able to bring the WISE project into this and being able to have water on demand gives these young farmers and ranchers many more options on their property. Because they can now put crops on there that require more water more often. Mm-hmm. And this allows that to happen so we can go to some higher value crops on these properties and have a little bit more diversity. Mm-hmm. And diversity is a big thing that we don't think about is if you have a drop in one commodity, if you've got enough diversity on your property that you have something else that can come in and because you have the water there, you're able to grow those crops. You're spreading your risk out a lot more, and that helps, especially for young farmers and ranchers coming in just trying to get started. So you're right; it does help with the whole community.
And the diversity you say is something we don't think about. We don't want to be some monoculture of just nothing but vineyards all of a sudden, or just something like that. We want diversity, don't you?
We grow trees really well. We can't cut many of those anymore. Pears are a little less return than vineyards these days. So you got to change with the times.
And I understand that, and we are changing with the times. Yep. I mean, look at the food, the local farm to food movement, or the farm to table movements and things, and restaurants and things. So we're really seeing a transformation. But what would it be like in this county, Steve Wise, if we had a drought and the WISE project was in? What would it be different like then as what we're managing today, which is Randy says we're going to, September they're going to cut water off. We haven't had. So what would it be like if it was here?
So two things. There's the way you manage the water, and then there's how much water you get. Currently, you get your water every 2 weeks. You get it out of the pipe. It's not under pressure, generally. And then you have to do with it what you do, whether you flood or
and
so
most
forth.
people flood with it, right, Randy?
Right.
Most people still flood irrigate.
It can be very efficient, but it's also a very time-consuming way to get water over
Yeah.
your property.
And it collects everything in the field along the way and dumps it into the creeks, and that's not good for, everything else below the creeks. Okay.
Right. So what we're going to do then is, if you do this, you can actually change how you get the water. So now, instead of getting it every 2 weeks, you can get it more or less on demand. So you can basically meet the crop need rather than the irrigation district schedule. So that's a big deal.
But you said that you still cannot use more than your water than you're allotted for the year, correct?
Well, Randy said that, but he was absolutely right. You're
Okay,
still
Randy,
right. So, but you're right.
Randy's right with that, isn't he?
He is. So you have a water right, and you have to follow those rules. You have a rate and a duty. How much you can get, how many CFS you can get, and a total amount. WISE doesn't change that, but nobody gets that now. The problem is everyone's short on how much water they get.
Okay, I see.
So
okay.
The other thing WISE does, other than just getting you your water much more often and under pressure, it gets you more water. And it gets you so you can get that down to the root where you need it.
It gets you whole.
Yeah.
So we're not getting all the water that our water rights maybe say that we can get. And even when we do get it, we aren't doing a very efficient job, again, of distribution of that water. So
because one of my crops
helps take care of both.
One of my crops may need a heavier water intensity at a certain point of the summer or the season or the growing season.
Absolutely.
And then I can back up, but I've got to still kind of manage my allotment of water, but I can do it customize it to what I want to grow.
Right, because of when that water is available in the pipe. So it improves that. More importantly, though, in some ways, or just as important, is as we go now, you go up to the reservoirs, you look, not very much water. You go to your irrigation district website, you find out, they're going to not be able to extend the year out as long as they would like to.
Which is normally like October, mid-October is the end of irrigation season generally.
And because of the drought conditions, the districts have stretched it as far as they can, done as good a job as possible. With WISE, the reservoirs are healthier, and we're also looking at having a pump system attached to the Rogue River for contract water out of Lost Creek. We can even shore up that shortage even more.
Wow.
Now, there's cost to doing that. So now we're talking about hydropower we talked about earlier. That can help pay for that. So the end result is now you've got the water you need, regardless of the drought conditions, and you've got it in a system where you can actually best adapt it to the crops you're growing. Pears need it at certain times more than others. Same with vineyards. Every crop is that way.
Pastures take a different
and
don't they, Randy?
As you talked about earlier, the time of year. When we're talking about 103, 104 degree temperature, all these crops are going to be demanding more water. I mean, it's kind of the evapotranspiration, and as that goes up, crop water requirements go up. And again, this system will help us much more efficiently meet that. We do, with our engineer and our planner, we go through with people and do an irrigation water management schedule so that they basically know what rotations they need to have for the different crops that they have on there. And that's great, but it doesn't do a whole lot of good if your crop needs water every 8 days, but because of the drought now, and especially if this happens again next year, we may find ourselves very early on 21-day rotations.
Wow. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what your crop requirements are. If you can't meet those, you're not going to have a crop.
And I think it points again back to this summer we're having right now. I can't remember, and I got here in 1984. Last time we had a run of temperatures in the 90 to 100 degrees for a month straight. I mean, we've hardly had that one little dip last week. We got down in the 80s. But for the most part, we've been just scorching beyond
It's
even the
summer,
normal.
though. It's summer here.
We
It's that way all the
usually get
time.
a peak around the fair, and we get one good peak in August. But I don't remember ever a stretch of 30 solid days like this where we're in the mid to high 90s and above.
Even if you were to stay constant with that, when you throw the drought in on top of that, again, it comes back to the stress factor.
Yeah.
If you have a limited supply, and on the other side of that, you have 3 weeks where you're high 90s, low hundreds, those two don't work very well together.
Right. Look ahead 2 months from now, okay, or the end of September. School starts, Labor Day a month from now, really, and we're still in the middle of this. 2 months from now, what's the situation going to look like around here?
Well, irrigation's done.
Irrigation is done early.
So,
it's going to be done early.
So then if you go out and you look at the reservoirs, they're going to be lower than they were the year before, but you're done. So from the district standpoint, from irrigation standpoint, it's no different.
Let it snow.
So we're back at the mercy then.
And then you're back at the beginning. The problem, of course, is we saw this in the early 90s, is you're starting further behind than you were.
Right.
And then if this happens again, you're even further behind at the beginning. And so you don't reset to zero. You reset further back with these droughts. We don't get to see that. A few years ago, we had consecutive really, really wet springs. Everyone was just bathing in water outside everywhere. It didn't matter. That's not the case now. So that's the problem. You're starting further and further behind. And obviously the infrastructure WISE is set up to try and to not only offset that, but to reverse it. So you're a little further ahead every time. Even with these drought conditions.
And you can even augment it if conditions get really tough.
And even remember with some of these small farmers and ranchers, they do have seasonal employees. And a lot of that depends on, having somebody there to help harvest their crops and get them to market and do those types of things. When we get to the point where we're not producing those crops anymore, we get back to laying people off, and that hurts our economy as well.
Yeah, and we've got just the irrigation is going to be cut off right around the time harvest season is going to be coming, so that's going to be kind of close knit thing.
There's not a topic we can bring up that doesn't tie water to our economy in a big,
not
big
a single
way.
one.
We all need it, don't we? We love water, that's for sure. The Real Estate Show. One more segment to go here on KMED this weekend. Pete Belcastro and Joe Brett here. Hey, don't you dare go away. The Real Estate Show continues right after this. Welcome to the Real Estate Show here on KMED this weekend. First weekend of August of 2014. Pete and Joe, the Real Estate Guys, with you. And thanks for joining us as we talk about water today throughout the Jackson County area and our situation that we find ourselves in with Randy White, the Executive Director of the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District, and Steve Mason, the manager of the WISE Project. Now, WISE Project, basically, it's taking those open ditches, putting some pipes in them, making it more efficient, water more efficient. I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm hoping that they're going to be make it because we need it.
I'm thirsty.
Well, I tell you.
We need more water.
Everybody laughs about water, but I'm telling you, if we don't have a big winter, then those reservoirs don't fill. Steve and Randy are going to be sitting in here a year from now, and we're really going to be moaning.
We're going to have to accelerate the WISE Water Project.
You think California is weird, and look at, you talk about infrastructure, and this is what you started to allude back in the beginning of the show, was infrastructure needed to be improved. Look what happened in L.A. recently with that big water main at UCLA, which spewed how many thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of
20
gallons
million
into
gallons.
Infrastructure needs to be improved, and our water infrastructure is certainly one of them. And this is what you're trying to do here, and this is what seems to make a lot of sense. Do most of the farmers, the districts, and all the people that you guys deal with this stuff, is everybody on board with this, more or less? I mean, is it something that is coalescing around?
And when this comes, what, do I have to do things the way you tell me, or how does it work, or how could?
Well, I don't know that we've really done any kind of polls for that, but the people that we've talked to, want to conserve water. They want to do the right thing. There are a lot of people out there that and again, we brought this up off air, but this is not a mandate that you have to go to a pressurized system on your farm when this goes in. If you choose to continue to flood irrigate, you can do that with this system. But as Steve mentioned, I may be, if I'm pressurized, and I may be irrigating every day of the month, where if you're on a flood system and you still choose to flood, you may still only get that water on a 2-week rotation.
And that's because...
Or in a drought, maybe 3 weeks.
And that's because Steve says that you're going to monitor how much water each of these places use, right?
Well, and it is already monitored.
It is monitored. Okay.
In a closed pipe system, it's a lot easier to do that and a lot more accurate to do that.
Yeah, okay.
But the idea then is, again, we talked about your water rate. That's how much water you're allowed to use over a season. You can't exceed that. And when you flood, you take a lot of water at once. And so to make your water rate go throughout the entire season, you take that water every week, every 2 weeks. When you use it through sprinklers and drip, you take less water, a lower flow, so you can take that more often. That's the idea behind it.
And especially if you have irrigation water management that shows that you're irrigating based off of crop needs, and you're not just dumping water on top of soils that may already be saturated. Because you also have a decrease in production if you try to, and I've seen this happen over and over, where we go back and we're irrigating soils that are saturated, and even trying to take water from an area that isn't getting enough water and put it on an area that we think is underproducing. But the reason it's underproducing is because we keep putting too much water on it.
Wow.
And so this helps us with our whole farm management if we can do these things.
And another concern that I asked about in the commercial was if I'm a water user, I see the drought coming. I can't just open my pipe and just use my allotment up in a couple of weeks or a month or so. No, you've got to go in pace with everybody else in the system, and there's, I don't want to call it rationing, but it's
not rationing.
No, it's not rationing at all. It's still an irrigation system. Right. You still have ditch riders. You still have to work with those people that are on the same pipe as you, just like you do now with the ditch.
You just have more water. You have more water over the course of the year.
Everybody has more.
Everybody has more water. I mean,
and it's to everybody's benefit to use it in the wisest way they can.
Right. But
most efficient way they can.
Yeah, you still get to use it how you want. And like you said, the infrastructure updates, they've done this a couple times. They started building these canals in the 1880s. They updated them in the 20s, put in Emigrant Reservoir the first time. They did it again in the 60s, and that's more or less the last time that there was a major infrastructure improvement. And like any infrastructure, whether it's roads, electricity, water, you have to do it. And the districts are doing infrastructure improvements every year. The problem is they're doing at their capacity. They're doing a mile, 2 miles a year, and we're talking 600 miles.
Wow.
I mean, it'd take a while, wouldn't it?
Wow.
It's just a big, complicated system.
But a big benefit in the end.
To everybody.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just on the farm irrigation. Randy can talk about that.
It's recreation. It's all the other benefits that come with it.
The economics, all that kind of stuff.
So do you think with the West and this drought that we're seeing in California and here as well, is there going to be some funding that's going to come from, Washington, D.C., our favorite place to get money from? Is there something out there that you're hearing that's going to come out to some of these water projects that are going to, obviously, the whole West needs some infrastructure improvements here?
Well, and I can't plan on that. I don't understand how D.C. works. I don't know how you're going to get.
You get it figured out. You let me know.
Exactly, large chunks of money.
We're just north of the Colorado River Basin, so we're probably in second place to start.
So you can't look at it that way. We have to look at it. How are we going to fund it locally? But before we get too far off, you did ask a question. From an irrigation standpoint, people are for this. It makes sense. No one's going to say, no, I want less water less often.
Sure.
What you're going to find are people that are, how does it directly impact them in a negative way? And there are going to be some places where someone who's not a water user, not an irrigation district patron, has been getting a benefit. For example, that canal has been leaking and subsurface water has been irrigating their pasture.
And and I guess wells have been recharged, maybe from open ditches.
Shallow wells.
Now, wildlife use those ditches, I know. Wildlife use those ditches, I know, and we're not going to cover them all up, are you? I mean, they're going to leave some.
Well, the answer is yes, but not for what you just said.
Okay.
So the other thing that goes on with these, and it's a whole nother subject, is all the municipalities use these ditches to some extent, including Jackson County, for stormwater management.
Sure.
So when the rains come, it helps prevent water from going through residential areas and developments, and it moves it to the next stream. What we would do is figure out those sections of canals that most important to those cities, and we would save those, and we would actually form a stormwater management district, because the pipes won't go in the canals; they'll go under the canals.
Interesting. Okay.
Or
That's
next to the canals. So we can still do both. We're not going to handicap the cities for developing around these canals over the last 100 years. We have to take advantage of those opportunities.
As usual,
you must sleep about 2 hours a night to chase all these details.
As usual, there's a lot to it. Randy, you got some classes I know coming up. JSWCD.org is the website to look for them. Pasture management, and what else you got?
Pasture management is coming up, and we're actually doing an early registration this year. So if you register before November, the cost is going to be less. And then there's the Ashland Drought Summit put on by Catalyst and Rogue Valley Cog. Ashland is, again, having their own drought summit.
Yeah.
Getting ahead of the game. So get on the district website and you can check all these out.
And those classes, people are taking them. They're really learning a lot. Hey, we're out of time. We got to go. Randy, thanks for being here. Steve, nice to visit with you. We'll see you in a year. So good luck with you and the project.
Yep.
Joe, we'll talk to you next Saturday here on the Real Estate Show. Have a great weekend, everybody, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to the Original Real Estate Show with Pete Belcastro and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys. For advice, guidance, or counsel on any of our topics, or to watch a replay of today's show, visit our website at realestateshoworegon.com. KMED.com. This show is sponsored by RE/MAX, Ideal Brokers of Southern Oregon, Tycor Title, All Cities Property Management, and the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District. We'll continue our weekly quest to enhance the value of your property and to make you a smart real estate consumer when we gather every Saturday and Sunday on KMED for the one and only original real estate show.